Morning.
Good morning.
Today is Sunday, October 15th, 2023. Let's set our intention, make aspirations by saying the four immeasurables prayer.
May all beings have
May all
happiness.
beings have happiness and the causes of
happiness.
happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering.
May all beings not be separated from the happiness which
that has
is
never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. It's been several weeks since last class because of travel and logistical things. So let's do a review of meditation technique, and then Victoria is going to speak for a while. And then we have questions, if there are any. So when you sit, before you even go into technique, it's always good to just, like an exhale of just dropping mental, physical tension, whatever that is. I'm sure this week there's tons of it. Just to kind of, it's like clearing out a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotion, a lot of tension. We like to sit on the floor to meditate. We use a cushion. A cushion is good because it's good to get your hips in line or above your knees, right? So cross-legged, could be like this. Some people do this half lotus thing, and some people do full lotus thing with the both leg, which is I can't do. I'm not that flexible. Whatever's really comfortable, could just be like this. But the cushion, having the hips at least even or above the knees is very good. A little more comfortable. Take some of the tension off the lower back when you raise the hips. So the back is very important that the back is straight. And straight doesn't mean rigid, doesn't mean, like military pose, just straight. So the, subtle energy channels have freedom to move. And even it just supports the movement of the energy in the body and your breath, by having that erectness. But relaxed, we're not like this, stiff. It's straight, but it's relaxed. Do you see the difference? Now I have a lot of tension in my lower back and shoulders to try to be really, straight. And now I take that tension away and it's straight, but it's just relaxed. And the head, rather than up or straight, tilt down just a little bit to take that tension off the back of the neck. The mouth, this is where a lot of tension can gather. Should be relaxed. It's good if you can breathe through your nose. If you can't because you're sick or, it's blockages, then breathe through your mouth. If you are breathing through your nose, which is, usually what is taught, the lips are very lightly closed and the teeth are apart and the tongue is resting between the upper teeth and the roof of your mouth. Now hands, you can have them left hand palm up, right hand on top of it, thumbs touching. You can just rest them on your knees. Some people do this, touching the thumb to the ring finger. That's up to you, your comfort. Our tradition, meditates with the eyes open for the most part, and the angle of the gaze usually is like slightly down, almost following the bridge of your nose. And where are you looking? Well, you kind of resting your gaze on whatever's in front of you. You're not like intensely focused. You're not like spacing out, unfocused. You're just kind of open, resting your gaze on whatever's in front of you. If you want to have something inspiring, like a view out a window or a flower or an image of a Buddha or something, you can do that too. It's not required. Those are the main physical components of the technique. So resting in that, relaxing in that, take a breath. You may want to start with a deep breath, but for the most part of the practice, it's just an even, easy breath. Don't even begin the practice yet, or the mind practice yet, or working with the thoughts yet. Those of you who are very new, as we just settle into this posture, we're not even, I'm not going to get into the working with mind thought instruction yet. Big preconception number one is that I can't meditate, that somehow my personality, the type of person I am, I'm not is not conducive to meditation. That's a fallacy. Everyone can meditate. Um, if a lot of people think, oh, you can meditate because you're already a calm person. If that was the case, then nobody who's calm would need to meditate. And that's not. It's a complete misconception. Uh, Number two is that my mind is so busy. That's my personality. That's my type of mind. It's so busy I can't meditate. My mind's busier than most people. I have I have attention issues and stuff. Again, that's a misconception. Everybody's mind is busy. Um, and those who have attention issues, we're actually not using attention in a way. It's not like sitting down to write a paper on something, that kind of attention. It's actually kind of letting go of attention in a way, and we'll get to that later. The other misconception is that meditation is about not thinking, which is also not the case. It's about working with thoughts, which are what the mind does, creating thoughts. The mind thinks. So let go of all those things. Relax into this posture that we're in. If you feel uncomfortable, tension, you can shift and settle back into relaxing into that posture. Now we're breathing through our nose. Now, for those of you who have done this with us or on your own many times, you can immediately go to the technique that works for you, that you've been practicing. For others, just focus on the breathing, where that air is moving above the lip, below the nostrils, right? Focus your attention there, right? Focus your awareness there. And when you lose that attention and focus, just remind yourself back to the breath, because you will. You will drift from that attention. We all, in that aspect, we're all, challenged with attention. Back to the breath, focusing on the breath. And as your breath kind of stabilizes and your body relaxes, now just look at what your mind is doing. You may have thoughts on, I can't do this, I shouldn't have done this, this is a waste of time, I'd like to do this, but I can't, I'm hungry, I'm stressed, I gotta check my emails, I wanna check the news, I wanna eat something. Whatever thought arises, whatever thought you notice has come up in your mind, just leave it there. Don't follow it. By follow, I mean continue that story of whatever it is. I'm hungry. What am I going to eat? How do I make it? What's in the fridge? That chain of thoughts that go from one to the next to the next. Just notice it, leave it there, and say to yourself, back to the breath. So the attention that thought was taking, put back to the breath, or, as most of you, I have a feeling have done before, imagine that thought like a cloud that has arisen in the sky and watch it dissolve back into the sky. The sky being a visualized, in your mind, visualized metaphor for the true nature of mind, which is limitless. When I say sky, I mean a clear, absolutely clear, stainless blue sky, limitless, infinite, calm, but full of potentiality. Anything can arise in that sky. Settle into that nature of mind, that calm, peaceful, limitless nature. And then the next thought, you use your mind to look at your mind, right? Use your attention to look at what your mind is doing. Notice it again. Watch it dissolve. That's the basic technique. Let's just sit for a while. You may find that your mind is particularly busy today, or it just is. It's the first time you're doing this. Wow, my mind is busy. Thoughts, boom, one after the other, like waves on the ocean. And that's fine, you there's no judging this. There's no what it should be. It's just about what it is. Notice if you've your mind is given rise to a thought, back to the breath. Your attention goes back to that place where the breath is moving in and out, or watch it dissolve like a cloud that has arisen in a clear blue sky. Because the thoughts arise from the mind, right? Always. And thoughts are not permanent. Thoughts, they stop, they dissolve, you move on to another thought. But what happens to that thought? It goes back into that mind from where it came. Is absorbed and just dissipated back into that great expanse of limitless clarity, calm, and potentiality. By potentiality, meaning the mind can give rise to so many thoughts, ideas, opinions, motivations that eventually can lead to actions of body and speech. But the impetus for those things originate in the mind, of course. So the actions of body, speech, and mind that cause, create karma, and karma, your world, that unfolds in front of you, both as an individual and as a collective karma that we participate in by living on this earth in this moment. So that's what I mean by that sky, which is stainless, totally clear, empty, if you will, but also has limitless potentiality. And those of you, some have heard the word emptiness, which is an English translation of shunyata, kind of a bad translation. And those of you who struggle with that, trying to understand or grasp those concepts, there's one example, a seemingly empty sky actually has limitless potentiality. So in that respect, empty not meaning void. Back to the breath. A chunk of time may go by where you've been lost in thought and weren't aware of it, and that's okay. And the moment you become aware, you are aware. And use the technique to rest in that nature of mind again. If you need to take a deep breath, get a big, burst of oxygen, go ahead and do it. And settle back into the natural breath. Back to the breath. Thought has arisen in the mind. Cloud has arisen in the sky. Watch it dissolve. Settle back into that limitless clarity. Sky-like nature of mind, which is always present. Even if we can't see it, it's always present, even when it's obscured by thought. Last thing I want to say is that you should get into the mindset that when you sit, and you sit and commit, okay, I'm going to sit today for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour, whatever it is. That time you're there on the cushion in that position, you are meditating. Whether or not you feel it's going well, whether or not you're lost in thought, whether or not you're actually able to apply the technique, you must consider that period of time as meditating. It's similar to when, like a writer, if you're writing a book, say, you have to commit a lot of time and discipline to it, right? So every day from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you're going to commit to sitting at the desk to write. You're probably not going to be typing for 8 hours. Maybe you're only going to be typing for 2. Maybe you're only going to be typing for 6. But that whole period you consider writing, because you are setting your consciousness towards that activity. It's the same thing here. Don't think of a lot of people get caught up with, I'm not able to meditate. Not being able to meditate means you're just not committing to the time and the session of it. Once you commit to the session and you sit on that cushion, you're meditating. Whether or not, you're going to spend, whether or not you're going to have 100 thoughts during that 10-minute session, 1,000 thoughts, or one thought, it's meditation. You should approach it. I think it's much more constructive to have that mindset about it. With that, Victoria has some things she wants to talk about.
Good morning. So I just wanted to I wanted to speak a little bit about the last retreat that I've attended, Vajrakalaya retreat with Rinpoche. He emphasized particular things at this time, even though it preceded the most recent events that we're all experiencing collectively. And at this last Vajrakalaya retreat a couple of weeks ago, Rinpoche emphasized many, many times that this identity we call the self, that we perceive as real, is in fact illusory. It is an appearance. It is based on ignorance of dualism, and it is also the very root cause of all suffering. It is both the cause and the result, because actions based on ignorance definitively produce and inadvertently produce suffering in each and every time. The word for a person in Tibetan is Kangzak. And this is actually a conversation I just had with a friend of mine. It's almost a reiteration of that conversation. The word Kangzak is composed of 2 words, of 2 chunks. Kang means full, and sak means impurities. So it's something that is filled with impurities. That's what this word person or individual means. What are these impurities that I call garbage? And the answer is very definitive and very clear in Tibetan Buddhism. It is the 5 afflictions. The 5 afflictions, the cause is ignorance. We almost can't say that it is one of the afflictions because it is the very root. And ignorance consists of, is twofold. There are 2 kinds of ignorances that make up the ignorance. One is not knowing how things, the nature of things, of persons, minds, and objects. We don't know the nature of things. We don't know how they abide. And the second is based on that, there is a split, a chasm where we break reality into 2, self and other. And it's really what the conceptual mind is. Conceptual mind is object, subject, object. It is kind of reality broken into 2 parts. So the 2 sides of ignorance, which makes up the affliction of ignorance, is kind of the root cause. It is both the cause and the result. Because when we act on ignorance, we act through the other 4 afflictions. And we know the other 4 afflictions are anger or hatred, and all the other kinds of, like on the dimmer parts of it, the impatience, the frustration, etc., etc. Anger turns into hatred. That's all one thing. Anger and hatred are an identical thing, because anger can flip from a tiny little flame to hatred, a flame that consumes everything very, very quickly. It's very, very easy. Desire. I want this, this desire that can quickly go from I like this to this is now possessing me and I'm addicted to it. Then we have arrogance, and arrogance is a portion of desire and ignorance. It makes us feel that I know better, what I think is better, my views are better, my religion is better, etc. That's arrogance. And arrogance, again, is composed. Rinpoche said at this last teaching that it is connected to ignorance and anger. And there is jealousy. Jealousy, we know, it undermines all kinds of relationships. Jealousy is wanting to tear down someone, something. It again is kind of a thing, but this time it's a thing of avarice and or desire, not having enough, wanting more, and again, anger. So those 4 afflictions with the root affliction of ignorance is what Kangzak is. On that basis, karma is created, and karma is what perpetuates the wheel of samsara permanently. There's no stepping out of it unless we step out of the dualistic mind of ignorance that holds the self as something real, because that holding self as real holds the other as other. And actually, it is in the Samantabhadra prayer, it is said that when we fall away from our natural condition of Buddhahood, like the mind becomes ignorant, it strays. We perceive the other based on fear, because there's the kind of it says there's a fainting away, and from fear we think of the other as an enemy. We experience and create karma. What do I mean by that? It's the cause and effect. Karma is both cause and effect. It is creating the suffering and then experiencing the suffering. It's as if through negative action, because based on mind of ignorance and the other 4 afflictions. If we throw a rock, we throw it up in the sky. That rock, so that's the cause. We throw a rock up in the sky, that is the cause. Afflictive, action based on an affliction. Uh, the rock will fall down back on us. That is experiencing the result of that karma. If we throw a flower up in the sky, a flower will land on us. If we throw a bucket of clean water will land on us. If we throw a bucket of refuse will land on us, maybe immediately, maybe tomorrow, maybe in the next lifetime. But karma is exactly this. It is our action, and then we are the recipients of the effect of that action. That's what karma is. And karma is always based on ignorance. There is no such thing as wisdom and karma. There is good, positive karma, and unquestionably. At the end of the day, full Buddhahood, full realization is when everything is transcended, because the dualistic mind, the conceptual mind, is transcended. So Rinpoche made a huge effort to say that all this, based on dualistic mind, this sense of identity that's cobbled together through collective, social inheritance, and then individual reliving through programming of these kinds of conceptual and emotional things, it is all illusory. And so when we understand that it's not that we just kind of sit back and do nothing, no, of course not, but we can ease off on the attachments and on the grasping, on the my judgment, my idea, I am more important than the ideas, judgments, etc., or well-being of the other. This Kangzak is a bag of impurities of ignorance and afflictive emotions. This identity cobbled together through collective and individual impurities, because these identities are just collections of judgments and opinions, social and individual, and we don't know where one ends and the other one begins. We think that these ideas are original, but that's what we do as meditators. We begin to detach ourselves so we can go beyond these kinds of things and to find a deeper sense of identity, of really who we are. And that is non-conceptual. That is free of the 5 afflictions. At the root of all samsara, all suffering, is self-clinging. That's what Rinpoche was really honing in this time so much. Wherever there is suffering and whenever there is suffering of any kind, of each and every kind, the cause is self-clinging. It's this attachment to this cobbled together self, to this kangzag, this bag of impurities, this dualistic mind that has no wisdom. This is also known as ignorance of not knowing the true nature of things, and certainly of not knowing the nature of mind. Buddhism is a conglomerate of methods and skillful means on how to come, each one of us, how to come. We select our means and methods as are most suitable to us, depending on our temperament and how ripe we are. By ripe, I mean that our minds are viewed as from like a young, immature mind to a wise, ripened mind, like an apple or a fruit that is green and then ripens and is ready for consumption. That's what that means. It's not that, one is bad and one is good. No, ripe and unripe is just this progression of the mind. It's like the sun rising in the east until it is in its zenith. So our mind kind of does the same thing. We do that as practitioners to experience the nature of mind. And by the way, the nature of mind is identical in all of us sentient beings. What is different in us are these cobbled identities, these wrong views, these not knowing really of how things abide. And we practice so that we can liberate ourselves, so that we can liberate our nature from these impurities of the five afflictive emotions. You know, whenever we say to ourselves, he made me angry, she made me angry, those words made me angry, you know, that sound made me sick. We as practitioners are not babies, and we start to understand that actually we are just being triggered by the things that we already carry inside. Uh, we know that we become angry because we don't get the right response, or we're not hearing flattering words. Rather, we're hearing things that we don't desire to hear. And so our inner judgments become these outer things that cause pain to self and other, because we respond to them, we're triggered by them, and you know, we're very, with the little flame from the inside, the little anger, when it lashes out, it becomes huge anger and burns and creates, you know, more suffering in its wake. Because otherwise, just think about it, how is sound, which is just a wave, can make us feel this way or that way. The sound has to be processed through our mind, not just perceived. Perception is the one thing, but it has to be processed through our conceptual framework, through this kangzak or the wisdom mind. And then it becomes either this thing that can become a source of action of very afflicted nature, or can become a source of action that is based on wisdom mind. Before each physical strike, a blow, a bomb, there is mind. The thought, he is my enemy, therefore I hate him. Mind precedes any and everything in each and every instance. That is the essence of Buddha Dharma, for us to actually know that. To be able to catch the energy rising from inside us before it becomes a blow, a strike on the outside, and really make a decision, how do I want this to come out? How do I want to my energy to manifest in the world? The stronger the sense of self-attachment, the stronger is the veil of ignorance. The thicker are the afflictive emotions that strike down into the world. The hammer of suffering is a hammer of suffering for self and other. And as practitioners, we sit in practice to transcend this level of ignorance, and to also be able to offer the world something more. And I ask you right now, in this very difficult time, and always, not just in this difficult time, but especially in this difficult time, not to be consumed with affliction, but try to be a good practitioner, to be a solid practitioner, and do tonglen meditation, because suffering is suffering. The way I suffer, the way the other person suffer, it's suffering, it's ubiquitous, you know. And the only way we can quench the suffering is by relying on our wisdom mind, by not allowing the creation, the generating of more and more and more suffering. We will not be able to put out a fire with more fire and with bolts of lightning. So right now, as practitioners, we need to be doing a lot of tonglen meditation to quench all the suffering. We have to bring wisdom mind like water to a fire, to a blaze, to be able to quench and quell. And we have to start by doing that inside. And then we practice the tonglen meditation. The visualization for that is that we take the suffering in the form of dark, smoke, etc., pain. We inhale the suffering of others, we bring it into our heart center, and at our heart center we have a bindu of light, like the sun in the center of us, powering our wisdom mind. That is our wisdom mind. When that dark smoke, the cloud, comes into us on the inhale, it as it's hitting our heart center, the light just breaks it up, and when we exhale, we send waves of white light that calms the temperature and brings down the hatred and soothes the fire. We could do this as practitioners. It's something real. It's not just imaginary, you know. We practice this. That's why we always work with our subtle body, so that we may know when negative emotions arise in us and we don't allow them to go through the gate. We liberate them on arising. And also, you know, at this time, we can do this very, very beneficial meditation of tonglen and not create more suffering in this world through hatred and things of that nature. Because this, you know, uh, like I said again, you know, we cannot put out a fire with more fire. So I beg all of you to practice and do tonglen meditation right now for all beings, all sentient beings in this world, human and non-human.
Thank you. For those of you who are new and you're looking for, and those of you who are not, we always encourage anyone with an interest beyond meditation into some of the Buddhist concepts that she's talking about or that are brought up, to go to the sources, the authentic teachers of authentic lineages. For those recommendations of books, also for beginners, go to solidagoproductions.com, which is where you registered for this class. Okay. We could take, there's a Q&A function in the toolbar of Zoom if you want to ask questions about what Victoria spoke about, or about the practice we did earlier. Have either of you found your Buddhism meditation enhancing your artistic creative side? Does Buddhism meditation give the opportunity to create art, relationships, friendships with others who we may not have considered creating before? It could. I mean, I don't. I you know, it's not. That's not why I practice or meditate. Obviously, if you're dealing with working with your negative thoughts, habitual patterns, and stuff, that's a natural way for more positive karma to be created and positive reflections in your outer world. So I'm sure it could. I don't think that should be, you know, the impetus per se for our artistic or creative side, but maybe the opportunity to create relationships and friendships with others you might not have considered before. That could be good motivation. You know, if you're walking around with a lot of anger, self-absorption all the time, that's certainly going to prevent you from cultivating more positive, healthy friendships with people who are, you know, trying to have something else, another experience, a more open, all-encompassing one, maybe.
You know, in the Western world, we think of therapies more in terms of cultivating the ego, the sense of self-wellness. Buddhism exactly is opposite in that regard. In Buddhism, the key antidote to ignorance, to you know, all kinds of forms of suffering and samsara, is the abolishment of self-grasping and self-attachment. It is the very tool that we use to overcome suffering. So, you know, think of Buddhism in that way. It's not a therapy in kind of a traditional Western sense. Buddhism is really turning on the light switch of the mind to 100%. You know, without a dimmer. It's like the full-on sun of wisdom. Of course, the consequence will be being able to see beyond, you know, small divisory kinds of things, being able to perceive minute things, and see beauty in everything, because the universe becomes more sacred when we have wisdom mind on, when it's turned on. We see the sacredness of self and other, and so of course it enhances our world. But again, it's Buddhism is really almost antithetical to kind of a therapeutic Western approach, because it very definitively specifies using destroying the attachment to the self in order to become awakened.
How does chanting music play into practice? Music doesn't play into practice, formal practice, no. And chanting is something that I think people have ideas and misconceptions about. In some practices of Tibetan Buddhism, there's mantra recitation, which is not the same as chanting. Chanting kind of, I don't know, sometimes has this very mindless kind of tuning out kind of thing. Mantra recitations, I think, is very different. You're dealing with seed syllables that create certain vibrations in the body. There's certain mantras that have to be given to you by a teacher after an empowerment. There are some that anybody could say, like the Om Mani Padme Hum, that the Dalai Lama, that's the mantra, the Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha compassion, that anybody could say. So it's not a one size fits all thing that I can speak about. But as we always encourage you, if you're interested in those things, mantra, something, I would say first to really focus your interest on the teachers and receive it through them. Even if it's not a teacher you're taking refuge with or seeing in person or following, but through reading their books or watching their teachings on YouTube or something.
For our tradition, Buddhists or Vajrayana Buddhists, mantras are always done in context of visualization and doing sadhana practice. In other words, we're visualizing the entire realm, the deity, and the deity recites the mantra for purifying the realm, the continuum of mind, and they have to be done in the context of that kind of practice.
Although deity is not, it's not like a god that you're praying to or supplicating, that, or a god or some kind of godlike thing that's giving you. It's
an enlightened being.
It's and an aspect of your own mind ultimately
Yes,
too.
exactly.
So that's why those things are better discussed with it, and they have to be kind of taught through a teacher, an authentic teacher, and a lineage that you're not even. That's why we don't discuss those or teach those things in class, even though we may practice it. That has to come from an authentic lineage teacher that gives you those teachings.
And three things are necessary, as Michael said: empowerment, transmission, and the practice itself. So, and that's usually done in the context of drupchans, what they call the great accomplishment, in group with the teacher leading the practice.
I practice every day. Some days are a battle. Is it constructive to close my eyes for meditation when my brain is babbling about everything it sees, or does it serve me more to deal with each of those thoughts rather than escape them? I think the latter. We work with the mind by dealing with the thoughts, not by escaping them. Sometimes closing the eyes can almost connect you more to the thoughts. But you have to find what works well for you in your practice. And I think you have to also remember that this technique of working with thoughts becomes most valuable when you're bringing it into your daily life in various situations of interacting with others and with the world. And for that, you're often, your eyes are open and you're present, that with that
A-
sight sense faculty,
And as Michael often gives the instruction of observing the thoughts arise and dissolve, always remembering that thoughts arise and dissolve in infinite field of awareness, and connecting to the awareness, the infinite field of awareness. That's really our nature. So thoughts, like clouds, arise and dissolve back into that infinite awareness and spaciousness. And we are observing our thoughts really to watch their arising and dissolving, so that we can perceive and connect to the infinite sense of awareness.
Is it right or wrong to say meditation is not a destination? It is a practice which can help one to place where one's inner journey can begin, to allow us to see our own arrogance, ignorance, be more mindful of pure thought and mind itself. Well, being more mindful of our thoughts and our mind and what our habitual patterns is, right? Not a destination. No, I mean, the spiritual path, that's why it's called a spiritual path. A path, implies a journey, right? And some say the path is the goal, being on the path, and the goal is the path. That said, like I said before, when you do sit, that is, when you do sit and commit to the session of meditation, there you are meditating. You're not on your way to meditating, if that makes sense. That might be a little confusing, but no, meditation as an aspect of a spiritual path is not a destination, I would say. No.
I mean, the teachings are very definitive that we're striving toward enlightenment, full enlightenment. That means this is the moment when we liberate the world of our ignorance and anger, hatred, desire, jealousy, pride. That liberation liberates us and countless sentient beings from that poison. Let's pretend we're just one drop of poison and we go into a pure, pristine lake. When that drop of poison drops into that lake, it pollutes that lake. When we liberate those poisons, we will liberate the dualistic conceptual mind into the mind of enlightenment, like the sky becomes cloudless and we know what that is, and we can exist for others out of that spaciousness, out of that uh, non-conceptual sense of love, where we're not picking, I love this one but I hate that one, because bodhicitta is not like this nice guy love. I'm good to those but I'm bad to, it is immeasurable love. That means it does not distinguish, it does not judge. It is love for all beings, again, human and non-human, all sentient beings. Yes, it's not a destination in that sense that we should desire to come somewhere, or that we should have great attachment. I am going, but we do start, and always we start with the meritorious, setting the mind into the meritorious sphere of I wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, because I'm in fact liberating all sentient beings by releasing my poison, by not being that drop of poison that drops into a pristine lake, pure water lake. I'm liberating that. My little drop is meaningful because when I liberate it, then the whole pond becomes clear. And at the end, we're also adding our little meritorious drop of practice to the ocean of wisdom of the Buddhas. When we dedicate our practice, we're putting our itty bitty drop of merit into the ocean that, of the merit of all the Buddhas. So, was that clear?
Yeah. So the mindset for meditation is reached by the right position of the body, physical memory. No, the position of the body is a support for the mind to settle on. It's a support. It's not reached by the position of the body. Is it fair to say whether it is bad or good karma, it is always pure? And knowing this, forgiveness is born. In essence, karma born forgiveness. You know, I'll be honest. In Buddhism, in all the teachings that I've experienced, the word forgiveness doesn't come up a lot. It does in Catholicism, which I grew up with a bit, but forgiveness doesn't come up a ton. That is not saying that Buddhists don't believe in forgiveness or are not forgiving people. But as a concept or an activity or an action, uh, um, it's not something that you come across a lot in books and teachings. What you do come across all the time is compassion. And I think it's good to make that distinction. This relates to the horrific events that have unfolded in Israel and Gaza. The level of hateful comments in response to every social media post, even those from respected and independent humanitarian groups, is so hard to comprehend and process, but I don't want to switch off to turn away. Would tonglen be an appropriate practice at this time?
Absolutely.
It feels like one small way in which one may try to respond with common humanity in the face of so much unbearable suffering from many.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I asked and implore everyone to use tonglen now. You know, what are our options right now? To be triggered and hateful, we're just adding the poison to
You know, we have a little time. Do you want to do a very brief
tonglen meditation.
teaching? Because for some people may not have had the teaching. There, it's on our YouTube somewhere. I don't know exactly which teaching, but if you could do a very concise, brief one, it might be really helpful today.
And you can find a lot of tonglen. It means tong is a tong is to give and len is to take. It's taking and receiving. You know, what we take is the difficulty, and what we give back, giving and receiving, or taking and giving. What we take is the difficult, and what we give is the pure. And we do it through visualization and breath. That practice can be 24/7 uninterrupted practice. So you think of your object of compassion, this whole situation that's unfolding, and you take away, you breathe in the difficulty, but don't forget to breathe in not just the suffering, but the causes of suffering. We must breathe in the anger, the judgment, the ignorance. We have to breathe in the causes, not just the effects and the results and the fruit of the causes. We breathe that in form of dark, into our heart center. At our heart center is a giant luminous sphere. And as the dark on the breath, on the inhale, comes toward our heart, it is broken up and transformed into pure white light. And as we exhale, we send that white light back. So that is how it's done. We visualize the dark. For a moment, we hold, and then we send back waves of light, and we do it in 10 directions as a sphere. We visualize as a sphere of light. So the 10 directions, you know, the cardinal and the up and down. And we think we're taking in the fire, the dark, the painful, in the form of gray, black, whatever, smoke, light. And we inhale it. We hold for a moment, we think of our Buddha nature, and we send back cool white light like water that purifies the environment, subdues the fire, subdues the hatred, subdues the crying, subdues the anguish. That's what we do. So don't forget, we take in the causes and the results. We take in the suffering that we're watching right now. We're also taking in the causes, the ignorance that ignites these fires. We take all of it. We have no judgment. We're not being partial. We're being compassionate without distinction. There's no mine and theirs and his and whatnot. We're not judging. We are not conceptualizing. We are just putting out the fire. We're just like firemen. We rush in wherever we have to go. And so this is what practice is. It is wisdom that does not distinguish between self and other, does not divide and sever the world into this dualistic thing. And we're doing it on the breath. So inhale the dark, hold, think that you're destroying it and sending back the white light, and then exhale. You could do it, usually we do it with just closed mouth with the nose. And yes, be aware of your central channel. That's why we sit straight, so that not just the karmic wind, but the wisdom wind, which abides in our central channel, can send, receive and send unobstructedly wisdom mind's activity. So we take or receive, and then we give, send out white light. We take the dark, connect to our Buddha nature, our giant source of compassion at our heart, and we send back the waves of white light. And that's what tonglen is. Was that clear?
Very, thank you. The teacher's name Victoria was talking about is Garchen Rinpoche, Garchen. You could find a lot of his teachings on YouTube.
And at this last teaching that I attended a couple of weeks ago, he so adamantly, almost as if he could foreshadow, the things to come. He was saying how this attachment to the self, this identity, I am this and I am that, and I am not like this and I'm not this, causes all the infinite forms of conceivable suffering. When our sense of identity is a little more loose, and we think that our identity is Buddhahood, and we know that Buddhahood goes with the 5 wisdoms, with the limitless unconceptual love for all sentient beings. When we live and stay in the mind of unimpeded, unbroken love of wisdom, there is no self and other. There is no self and enemy. There is no I like this, I hate that, He really honed in on this, loosen the bonds of this dualistic grasping to the self, because it is the cause and the locus of where all the suffering is initiated.
Victoria, could you speak to the affliction of fear? As that is how I perceive the source of anger and ignorance.
Of course. And you should read the Samantabhadra prayer. It's a very ancient prayer, Samantabhadra prayer. Maybe we'll have it posted next time.
You could Google it.
You can Google it. But it says very, very clearly that the wisdom mind for a moment kind of like faints. It turns away from the source of wisdom, and fear arises because it perceives its own manifestation. It perceives its own manifestation of light and luminosity as other. And from that arises fear. Whenever we separate the world into self and other, fear is the kind of like the fuel that runs that car. It's part and parcel of it. Nothing is really divisible in this world. Everything is interdependent. But fear, hope and fear, is this fuel that drives kind of like this, splits things into self and other. And the fear makes us perceive the other as enemy. It happens very, very naturally. It's almost preconceptual. But That's what happens. And out of this fear, we anticipate the other already being a perpetrator, being an enemy. So if we perceive the other as that already before we even experience, our experience of the other is tainted by fear, we will necessarily experience the other as something negative most of the time. Our minds are not so potent yet, they're not fully on, they're not in their Buddhahood mode. We're on a dimmer, we're like in that dark space. So in the dark, the metaphor for fear, in the dark, the mind perceives a rope as a snake. So in the dark, in that state of mind of ignorance, which is the dark, we see the rope on the floor and we are so afflicted because we think it's a snake, and that's how we perceive the other as the enemy, because our fear as a motivating, as a fuel, as this motivating cause makes us, already triggers us, and in our mind we already have perceived the other as this dangerous thing, as this, and so fear is tremendous cause, the fuel of afflictive emotions. But the fear exists because the self exists before that. Fear and this splitting the world into self and other is one thing. We have fear for ourselves, that we're going to be hurt, that something's going to happen against us. I'm not going to get the result I want. That is the fear. Fear is self-grasping. And so to dismantle fear, we have to go to self-grasping. If we don't believe that this concrete self exists, then there is no fear. Fear and ignorance are one thing. They're like the different sides of the prism with the different lights, it's a part of ignorance, and the ignorance is holding the self as this existing important thing.
Okay, we have one last question. Time for one last question. If you have like questions you really are struggling with and need to see if we could address, and we won't get to them today, so you can email Michael Imperioli Meditation 101 at Gmail.
And if I may, just for one more second, please, right now, if you feel fear, if you feel anger, you feel anxiety, you feel all these kinds of things, please sit to meditate and unravel these things. Know that they are born out of these kinds of, social and individual constructs of ignorance. We are not going to put out fires with those kinds of things. We can only do that by purifying our afflictions. And that's how we can help others. We can really help others now by doing our tonglen meditation and really staying very focused, very clear, very precise, with awareness on all the time.
I have a friend who's grieving very bad in Israel. I want to be there for her as a friend. We're hundreds of miles away, but she needs a way to take her emotions out. She is struggling. We all are, but I want to be there for her as best I can. What suggestions can I give her that may help her through this, like us all? I mean, for someone who's in the midst of real difficult suffering and horror, trying to give some kind of instruction like this or a practice may be, not the right moment, because what they have to process in the immediate present is so immediate that it's hard to just say, okay, try this practice or something new or something different. Obviously, you can express your love and let them know that you're thinking of them, or if you can just be there and hear them talk, listen to them, express your love, express your friendship. That's very important. When someone's going through a difficult time, just them hearing from you and them hearing your concern and hearing you, them hearing you express your love can go a long way.
And there is one method that is very, very, it's very definitive, and the teachings are very clear about it. It is said, for example, it is said when we experience a very grave illness, terminal illness, what we do, or grief or loss, what we do with that is we don't meditate on ourselves. What we do is we meditate on that. Let's say you're afflicted with anger or fear or a terminal illness, the kind of finality looming at the corner. What you do with that is that you expand it to all beings who are experiencing that very same thing right now, because whatever we're experiencing, there is at least several others in the world who are experiencing. Most likely millions are experiencing exactly the same thing. So what we do, instead of getting stuck in the more compressed, narrower space where the pain and suffering becomes unendurable, we blow it out and we take in and we think of all the others who are going through the same things, like my child was killed, I am experiencing terminal illness. We take all the beings who are feeling exactly the same suffering right in this instance. We take them into our heart. That's another form of tonglen meditation. We think on them and we take their suffering and we send them the white light. So it's a very simple practice because you're practicing exactly, you're not denying or suppressing or moving away from that emotion. What you're doing is you're taking that emotion, fear, anger, anguish, anxiety, and you're doing that practice, you're expanding it to include all those who are feeling exactly the same thing right now. And in that, of course, you are included automatically because you're a part of all those who are feeling that same thing. And you're doing the same kind, by expanding that practice and taking all the others who are feeling that same feeling and sending them, sending them white light. It doesn't have to be anything conceptual, white light. We're already opening up that space. And we, at the same time, we're not just like suffocating internally, but we're actually doing work as practitioners. And I think it's extremely easy and extremely helpful. It's a very practical advice from the teachers and the teachings, to take that very emotion, that very affliction, and instead of discarding it, suppressing it, judging it, etc., you work with it on the spot. And I think a great advice. I mean, it's such a horrendous time. But the advice is to take that feeling that is crushing one person and to bring all the others into it so it becomes bearable. At the same time, the minute that all these others become a part of your mind continuum, you take the responsibility of easing their mind, of helping them, easing their suffering condition, and you're automatically included in that. So holding others with the same grief, with the same problem, with the same circumstance becomes very, very beneficial for self and others. So benefiting self and others again by even just holding them, that is also tonglen practice.
Okay, I want to thank our producer Nick Solidio, who without him we couldn't do this, and he dedicates his and donates his time and effort so you can do this class with us. Thank you, Nick. So let's dedicate the merit from today's class for the benefit of all beings by saying dedication prayer. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from
liberated
this
from this
ocean of samsara and its
the
pounding waves of birth,
old
old age,
age,
sickness, and death. See you next week.